Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the 2018 graduating class from South Dakota State University. Founded in 1881 as the state's Morrill Act land-grant institution, South Dakota State University improves quality of life through exemplary teaching, relevant research, and connected outreach. Today's graduates represent a broad range of academic disciplines, some traced to the university's earliest days, and others developed in response to the needs of the state and region. Under the leadership of Interim Dean Jason Zimmerman, candidates in the College of, under the leadership of Dean Jane Moore, candidates in the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions are led by their banner carrier, Associate Professor John Capez. Under the leadership of Interim Dean Jason Zimmerman, candidates in the College of Arts and Sciences are led by their banner carrier, Assistant Professor James Murphy. Under the leadership of Dean Jill Thorngren, candidates in the College of Education and Human Sciences are led by their banner carrier, Assistant Professor Lacey McCormick. Of Interim Dean Mary Kay Helling, members of the University College are represented by their banner carrier, Amy Holm. Of Dean Rebecca Bott-Knudsen, members of the Van D. and Barbara B. Fishback Honors College are represented by their banner carrier, Professor Fathi Halawish. leadership of Provost Dennis Hedge. Faculty are led by Marshals, Associate Professor Teresa Seefeld and Associate Professor Joshua Westwick, and by their banner carrier, Associate Professor Aaron Ragsdale. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Under the leadership of President Barry Dunn, the platform party is led by Honorary Marshals Professor Dan Kemp and Professor Kendra Cattleman. The mace carried by Dr. Cattleman signifies the authority and pageantry of academic ceremonies. Honorary Marshals lead the processional in recognition of distinguished service to the university. Information about today's speakers and honorary marshals is printed in the program. Dr. Cattleman served as the director of the didactic program in dietetics from 1997 to 2018. She was currently serving as the department head for health and nutritional sciences. She was instrumental in maintaining the standards of accredited dietetics program. She also assisted in developing an exchange program with China Medical University. Dr. Kemp found his calling was teaching mathematics and has taught almost every undergraduate mathematics course and a few graduate courses offered at SDSU. His commitment to teaching was recognized in 1979, 2012, and as the Honors College Teacher of the Year in 2016. President Dunn, Regent Roberts, distinguished guests, members of the faculty, administrative leadership at the university, graduates, family and friends of the graduates, and ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the 2018 commencement ceremony of South Dakota State University, which will now be in order. Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors by Army ROTC cadets Jessup Workman and Blake Hess, and Air Force ROTC cadets Ben Williams and Ethan Frazier, and the Eagle staff by Freddie Moran, Native American United States Infantry veteran, and the playing of our national anthem by the Symphonic Band. Please remain standing until the colors are posted and the anthem finished. You may be seated. Please welcome the President of South Dakota State University, Barry Dunn.
Thank you, everyone. It's my privilege to serve as the 20th President of South Dakota State University and to welcome you to the university's 132nd commencement, a special day of recognition and of celebration. Thank you all for being part of it. More than 1,300 undergraduate students have completed degree requirements during spring semester, bringing the total number of undergraduate degrees confirmed this academic year to more than 2,000. This afternoon's ceremony is for students receiving an associate or a baccalaureate degree in the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions, the College of Education and Human Sciences, and the College of Arts and Sciences. Students receiving associate and baccalaureate degrees in the College of Nursing, the Jerome J. College of Engineering, and the College of Agriculture and Biological Sciences were recognized at the 10 a.m. undergraduate ceremony earlier today. Students receiving the master's degree, Doctor of Philosophy degrees, Doctor of Nursing Practice, or Doctor of Pharmacy degrees will be recognized in the graduate ceremony at 5 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you again for coming. We are very pleased you are here. As you can imagine, an event like this relies on the collaboration and efforts of a great many people, so I'd like to briefly recognize a few of them now. The ROTC Ushers and Color Guard, Professor Teresa Seefeld, and Assistant Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences, and Josh Westwig, Associate Professor of Communication Studies, who served as faculty marshals, assisting the students and the faculty in the processional this afternoon, and the Symphonic Band under the direction of Jacob Wallace, Assistant Professor of Music, and Kevin Kessler, Director of Athletic Bands. Please help me in thanking them for their contributions to this very special day. I also want to thank our honorary marshals who were introduced earlier, Professor Kemp and Professor Cattleman. Will you please step forward? Please join me in recognizing them. It is now my pleasure to introduce those members of the platform party participating in today's ceremony who will not be introduced later in the program. I ask them to stand and be recognized. Please hold your applause until all have been introduced. Dean of the Graduate School, Kenchel Dorner. Dean of the College of Agriculture and Biological Sciences, John Killefer. Dean of the College of Nursing, Nancy Farrenwald. Dean of the Jerome J. Lohr College of Engineering, Lou Brown. Interim Dean of University College, Mary Kay Helling. Chief University Librarian and Acting Dean of the Van D. and Barbara B. Fishback Honors College, Christy Tornquist. Vice President for Research and Economic Development, Daniel Scholl. And a special guest, President Emeritus David Sheequin. Thank you for being part of our today's celebration. I also would like to recognize and thank all the parents, friends, and loved ones who are here to share this special day with today's graduates. You have provided support and encouragement in countless ways over these past years. Members of the graduating class of 2018, please rise to recognize and thank your parents, friends, and loved ones for their support with a round of applause. Let them know you appreciate them. You may be seated. We are honored today to have Rick Holm, MD, Geriatrics and Internal Medicine of ERA, here to share a message with the graduates. Dr. Holm has practiced medicine for nearly 40 years as a medical staff member of the Avera Medical Group here in Brookings and the Brookings Health System. Also, he is an adjunct professor in journalism at South Dakota State University and a clinical professor at the University of South Dakota Sanford School of Medicine, where he has been a medical researcher, lecturer, and a mentor to pre-med students, medical students, residents, and other health professional students. He is a past president of the South Dakota State Medical Association, past governor and master of the South Dakota chapter of the American College of Physicians. He was recently inducted into the South Dakota Hall of Fame, cited as South Dakota's voice of healthcare. Please help me welcome Dr. Holm to the podium.
Students, family and friends, SDSU faculty, Provost Hedges, President Dunn, regents, and distinguished guests. Happy Cinco de Mayo, and congratulations, graduates. After high school graduation in DeSmet, South Dakota, I spent 6 years in Vermilion, 8 years in Atlanta, 37 years practicing medicine in Brookings. I'm a 69-year-old jackrabbit, tried and true. Go Jacks. Go theater, music, engineering, farming, pre-professional, sports playing Jacks. Go Jacks, blue and gold. I've lived a healthy life, connected, eating right, exercising daily, yet I came down with pancreatic cancer 19 months ago. I've been treated with chemo, radiation, major surgery, and now with recurrence, I'm back on chemo. But I'm still here, and I truly feel blessed and thankful for every day. And that's the truth. Many of us are fearful of death. Woody Allen is reported saying, "I'm not afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens." A cardiologist friend recently shared a quote with me: "One day you'll be just a memory for some people. Do your best to be a good one." I think that's not bad advice, but I think the measure of our worth after we die has less to do with being remembered and more to do with the reflection of our actions on others. It's that pay it forward or that Jimmy Stewart wonderful life sort of thing. I believe that meaning and purpose comes with the good that we do and how that moves others forward, making things better on and on into the future. And that fits well with my inclusive spiritual and Christian beliefs. Speaking of meaning and purpose, as a dad, I relished and I still enjoy parenting side by side with my pediatric nurse practitioner wife. She's a wonderful mom. I read to our 4 kids almost every night as they were growing up and finished with a prayer based on medical ethics. Dear Lord, help us be kind, honest, and respect people's choices. In retrospect, if I could change those nights of prayer, I would add, and help us let go of hate. As our kids were growing up, I would sometimes find myself saying to them, "I will always love you unconditionally, but sometimes I don't like what you're doing." We should say that to our enemies too. Have you heard, if you want to destroy your enemy, make them hate? Hate is poisonous, and most poisonous to the one who harbors it. So don't hate when contending with an enemy. Instead, turn your enemy to fight hard for what's right. We should bow with the Hindu greeting, Namaste. which means the divine spirit within me bows to the divine spirit within you. Remember what Jesus said, as did Mohammed and Buddha, love your enemy. I think it makes us better fighters for a cause. As Rose Tico in the latest Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi, said, that's how we'll win. It's not fighting those we hate, it's rather saving those that we love. For example, hating the president, whether it be Trump or Obama, widens the gap, increases hate, destroys us. Evil wins when we hate. Instead, love your enemy. Treat everyone with respect and graciousness. Don't be rude. It lessens your credibility. If you have anger, point it at the problem, not the guy. Use it as propulsion to fight to the tooth for what you want, for the right, for the cause. You can do that a whole lot better if you don't drink the poison of hate. Dear Lord, help us let go of hate. Now, there are three objectives I'd like you to savor in this time I have with you. Number one, first realize you're in power now. You know, as Ben Franklin said, some people die at 25 and aren't buried until they're 75. Don't let your spirit die at 25. Second, realize the world is crippled with unkindness, dishonesty, and the limitations of our freedoms. Although I believe society is gradually getting better over hundreds of years, there are a great many unacceptable happenings going on right now that should outrage you. And third, realize it's you who are going to change the world. It's your turn to fix it. As Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. I remember that, and he does too. So let's look at the first objective. Realize that you're in power now. As a physician, I know that most of you are at your physical peak, healthy and strong, with memory and learning capacity at the max, and with more resilience and flexibility than you will ever have again. Of course, you have a lifetime to learn from experience, with successes and failings, to earn wisdom, to reach your full emotional and judgmental potential. But your body and your brain is at its best right now. You are in power now. However, there is bad news. It won't last, and life is remarkably short. Some of you will fall out of the nest and hit the ground and will fail, be destroyed by alcoholism, or suffocate to death with opioids. Some will not give yourself enough sober time to mature, let alone be creative. Some will die in tragic accidents, cancer, or another disease. Life is short. Take it from someone with experience. Fearing death is bad for your health, a waste of precious time. Your best approach, don't wait. Be alive now. Make every connection to others now. Love generously, even wastefully. Savor each other and every moment now. Love gets one through the dying experience and pays back even wastefully. I love you, and I mean it. It's better than chemo. Don't live recklessly and take stupid risks, but you'll have to take some risks. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So stay in the game when it's worth it, and when you lose, lose graciously. Live a life that you can say at any time, I have no regrets. And this is also your time to go on a quest for what work there is that turns your crank, that appeals and motivates you, that interests you the most. Follow your bliss, and your lifetime of work will be a lifetime of joy. Realize you are in power now. The second objective, realize the world is crippled with unkindness, dishonesty, and limited freedoms. Something's wrong when unkindness is normal in this, our land. People are unkind when they're competing for the same job, competing in sports, representing a different town or a different university. People can be despicably unkind as they compete for a political position. They become the worst examples of how to treat others. Terrible examples for our children and for all of us. Something's wrong when people are unkind based solely on a difference in color or race, a different sex or sexual orientation, a different age, religion, language, and country. We've learned from Dutch elm disease that when a community has only elm trees, disease can destroy them all. With diversity, when diseases arrive, the trees survive. So it is with a diverse community and society. With diversity comes survivability, safety. With diversity comes good things. Embrace it. Be kind to people who are different. And something's wrong when people are so unkind that they would gun down innocent people in a musical venue in Las Vegas, shoot innocent children in schools, or send bombs to random people. Something is wrong when unkindness is normal in our land. Something's wrong when dishonesty is normal in our land. It's wrong when the news and research and government is no longer factually based. When journalism, industry, and government-sponsored research bows to the throne of marketing and making money. Dishonesty is normal in our land when lobbyists and peers in Washington representing special interest groups and corporations with only profit motive have more influence on our politicians than facts, than research, than grassroots groups of representing people. We know this is true when we see how in 1996 the NRA forced the Dickey Law and turned off any CDC and governmental-sponsored research on gun violence for 22 years. Now, hunting pheasants with my dad remains one of my absolute fondest memories. But when lobby money in Washington can obstruct research meant to find ways to make the innocent safe, I am outraged. Something is wrong when dishonesty is normal in our land. And something is wrong when the limitation of our freedoms and choices has become normal in our land. When extremely allergic people have to buy a life-saving EpiPen, which costs $3 to make, has been pushed to $381. When the cost of health care in the U.S. is about twice that of the next 10 most expensive countries, and yet we are rated average in quality, and not all of us have access to health care. Something is wrong and freedoms are limited when dying patients are kept miserably alive for a while longer and not allowed to die in comfort because the patient hasn't made a living will, the family has run from discussions of death, the health system is profiting, and the doctor doesn't have the time to help the patient through this tough time. Something is wrong and freedoms are limited when college and graduate school and med school is progressively less and less available to middle and lower class kids. When gerrymandering manipulates voting to the advantage of the political group in power, and when only 35% of the people get out and vote. 35%. Something is wrong and freedoms are limited when disparity of wealth, where the rich are richer and the poor are poorer, is worse and getting worse in this USA than in any other wealthy country in the world, and it threatens our democracy. Something is wrong when, and I repeat this for emphasis, only 35% of the people get out and vote. I should say that if you don't vote, you willfully give up your right to complain about our government. Please vote, and vote for those who match your moral and ethical positions. Something is wrong when our democracy is threatened by the limitations of our freedoms and choices, and this is normal in our land. Well, the third objective, you can and will change the world. With power comes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. It's you who have the power to change the world. Look at the cloud of the kids in Parkland, Florida. Of course, you will have to take some risks. You will have to be willing to take flack and fail sometimes. You will have to be persistent. There will be resistance. But you are in power now, and the responsibility is yours. It's you who have the responsibility to show others how to treat people with kindness. It is you who have the responsibility to look for and demand truth and honesty. It's you who have the responsibility to stand up for and bring back respect for freedom, choice, and liberty in our land. And it's you who can stop hate with love. You are in power now. The world is crippled with injustices. It has to be you to change the world. And then, like Paying It Forward, or Jimmy Stewart's A Wonderful Life, meaning and purpose comes back to you with the good that you can do and how that moves others forward, making things better on and on in the future. Dear Lord, help us to be kind and honest and respect people's choices, and help us let go of hate. Amen. And go Jacks.
Thank you, Dr. Holm. We very much appreciate your remarks and your wisdom.
Thank you.
The university takes pride in all its graduates, but faculty and administrators take special pride in those who have achieved high levels of academic excellence. I welcome to the podium Provost Dennis Hedge, who will recognize those students graduating with academic honors. Provost Hedge.
Earning a degree takes hard work and commitment. A special group of graduates deserve extra recognition today. These students have reached the highest levels of academic achievement. The program notes those members of this year's class whose academic achievements have earned them the distinction of graduating with honors, as well as those who are graduating from the Van D. and Barbara B. Fishback Honors College. In addition, South Dakota State University initiates students into the National Honor Society of Phi Kappa Phi. Members are elected from every branch of the arts, sciences, humanities, and the professional colleges. Only those in the top 10% of their senior class are eligible for election to Phi Kappa Phi. We would now like to recognize those who have achieved this high scholastic record. Will all graduates who are graduating with honors, those graduating with honors college distinction, and those who have joined Phi Kappa Phi, please stand so that you can be recognized. Thank you. We also have students from across the colleges who have prepared to become teachers. Will those graduates who have completed the teacher education curriculum for certification as teachers please rise so that you can be recognized? Thank you. I'm now pleased to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Corey Norris, Professor of Military Science for Army ROTC, and Lieutenant Colonel Brian Schroeder, Professor of Aerospace Studies for Air Force ROTC. They will recognize the candidates for commissions. Lieutenant Colonels.
Thank you. Please join us in recognizing the following graduates who were commissioned as second lieutenants in the United States Army or the United States Air Force at commissioning ceremonies held yesterday. Lieutenants, please stand and remain standing until all the names have been called. Please hold your applause until all names have been called. And some of these lieutenants were recognized at the commencement ceremony earlier today. From the Army, Trina Baker, Kaylee Buckles, Alex DeWald, Jonathan Heckman, George Horrocks, Scott Schladweiler, and Nicole Severson.
For the Air Force, Chandler Bauer, Emily Johnson, John Jordan, Cole Jorgensen, Tyler Joyle, Jared Newharth, Gerald Peden, Nathan Shilvach, and Mason Walker. Congratulations.
Andy Folberg is a 1999 graduate of South Dakota State University and president and CEO of South Dakota State University Alumni Association. Ms. Folberg will bring greetings to the graduates as they transition from students to alumni. Andy?
President and I are a little bit different in height. Thank you, President Dunn. Good afternoon, graduates. It is an honor to be with you today and officially welcome you as you join over 90,000 individuals who have graduated from this institution. Your hard work and achievements have led you to this day, and we are very proud to have you as part of the growing alumni family. Today, you ring the bell for the yellow and blue as you enter the next phase of your life as a Jackrabbit. We at the South Dakota State University Alumni Association are excited to welcome you to the ranks of alumni as you join the growing list of staters who continue to lead their chosen industries and communities. This is a very special place. The people here have prepared you to do great things, and we can't wait to hear about them. Congratulations again to each and every one of you on a job well done. When many of you arrived on this campus as freshmen just a few years ago, you attended Fall Convocation. At this event, you were given a unique coin. On the coin are the words, "Once a student, forever an alum." You were encouraged to take that coin, drop it in a giant cowbell, and make a wish for your college career. Today, we'd like to think that you received your wish. After receiving your diploma today, each member of the graduating class will receive this coin from a member of the Alumni Association staff. We promised you that we would return the coin to you, and today we fulfill that promise. And yes, obviously, it's the exact same coin. As you walk across this stage, you will be closing a chapter of your life, but at the same time, you will be opening another. As you leave this place as a student, remember that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you will always be a member of the South Dakota State University family. We at the Alumni Association are very proud of you and look forward to helping you stay connected to your alma mater and hope you will visit often. Today and forevermore, you are Jackrabbits. Congratulations, graduates, and best of luck to you all.
Thank you, Andy. Vice President for Student Affairs, Michaela Willis, will now introduce this year's graduating senior speaker. Michaela?
An important and traditional part of our commencement ceremonies is an opportunity for a member of the graduating class to address the gathering. I am pleased to introduce Viraj Patel as this year's senior speaker. a spring 2018 graduate, will offer remarks on behalf of this year's graduates. Viraj is a graduating senior from Mumbai, India. He will graduate with a degree in speech communications with minors in studio arts and political science. Through his experiences with Jackrabbit Forensics, Patel gained a love of public speaking and an interest in government. Upon graduation, he will attend graduate school. During his time at State, Patel was active in the Students Association, serving as senator for the College of Arts and Sciences, and was recently named Senator of the Year in 2018. He was also active in Jackrabbit Forensics, Delta Chi, TEDx SDState, and International Nights. Please join me in welcoming Viraj Patel.
Mr. President, deans, faculty, staff, administrators, parents, and most importantly, class of 2018, thank you. Thank you for your love and support. This is an honor I will never forget because, let's face it, my presence on this stage is unlikely. When I accepted admission to South Dakota State University, I was unaware that I was accepting an invitation to a snow-capped flatness of nothingness. This place was foreign to me, literally. Overwhelmed by the weight of two 50-pound suitcases and emotionally insecure because of my lack of fluency in my second language, English, I was looking for a home away from home. At C2F2, the Fall Student Engagement Fair, I walked up to a booth called Jackrabbit Forensics. I was like, yeah, this CSI stuff is what they show on American shows in India. This is great. Well, if you're still wondering, I was wrong. This forensics was speech and debate. A wonderful, wonderful woman by the name of Andrea Carlisle, who, by the way, is reading the names of all of us at this ceremony today, welcomed me into Jackrabbit Forensics. And this was particularly terrifying because the insecurities which I was trying to hide would be on full display by joining the team. Plus, friends, this is a community where people wear suits and talk to walls. Forensics. A welcoming community became my home away from home. But I felt as though I was missing a piece of the puzzle. I never understood the importance of volunteer work or community service. Back home in Mumbai, it was always every person for himself. Quite ironically, in one of the most individualistic cultures in the world, I found the importance of collectivist values. The opportunities given to me by members of the Brookings community through 1 Million Cups, through TEDx Brookings, and through Amanda Quam, who serves on the board of directors for the South Dakota World Affairs Council, taught me that you can only serve yourself when you serve others. The leadership opportunities I received through the Students Association, serving as a senator for the College of Arts and Sciences, through Delta Chi, my fraternity, which gave me a Spanish language learning intensive program in Ecuador, and through Jackrabbit Forensics, which taught me the art of effective rhetoric, all made me a better human being. 4 years later, I stand here, a graduate in speech communication with honors, minors in political science and studio arts, but most importantly, I stand here as a jackrabbit. I tell you my story because it is the story of all of us. We all had our doubts, we all had our difficulties, and we all have our memories. We walked into our advisor's offices in Vintrode not knowing if a Spanish minor would fit into a 4-year plan. We stayed up late with our friends studying Chem 114 because only God knows the answers to Jay Shore's exams. We all celebrated when the likes of Zach Zenner and Dallas Goedert signed with top-tier NFL teams. We were able to do all these things and be all these things because of one promise, the promise of South Dakota State, the promise of a Bikini initiative, which will create an American Indian Student Success Center on this campus, the promise of the School of Performing Arts, which can not only host Tony Award winners like Leslie Odom Jr., but also launch the careers of future artists and professionals, the promise of the College of Education and Human Sciences, which can inspire counselors who are equipped to address the mental health crises across college campuses in America. And most importantly, the promise of our teachers who teach us to be the best versions of ourselves. I talk about these promises because let me be clear, in no other university in the world is my story even possible. And I know that I owe a debt to all those who come after me, that we owe a debt to all those who come after us. It is our turn to live up to the promise of South Dakota State. So, when you walk out of here today, remember that in a room when a jackrabbit stands, nobody sits. Remember that today is not the end, it is the new beginning, that we are the next generation, the generation of change. Use your Spanish and Global Studies degree to teach the language to the less fortunate. Use your knowledge of design and architecture to make a world accessible for everyone. Use your knowledge of pharmaceutics to conduct research which can potentially cure cancer. And use your music degree to create music which can make the soul dance and the heart so overfilled with joy that it begins to bleed yellow and blue. Faculty and staff, I have a message for you as well. Innovation in technology is happening at a rate faster than the speed of light. While you incorporate social media, narrated PowerPoints, and online test taking in your classes, make sure that the classroom is mentally, physically, and emotionally accessible to all learning styles. College campuses across America are encountering an increase in active civic engagement. Administrators, implement policies which welcome open and fair discussions and promote freedom of thought in the marketplace of ideas. If you're not yet convinced of the promise of South Dakota State, I hope this does it for you. 4 years ago, I made a promise of my own to my parents. Sitting in my cluttered living room in Mumbai, India, I told them, if I go to South Dakota State, I will work till I cannot physically take it anymore to be the commencement speaker because I want to make you proud. My mom, Geeta, my dad, Virendra, and my Krina are back home in India, but are watching the live feed as I speak. And I want to tell them, I love you, and I made it. I made it because of wonderful individuals like Andrea Carlisle and Dr. Tim Nichols, Dr. Rebecca Bott and President Barry Dunn. I made it because of the great promise of South Dakota State. It is because of this promise that those who didn't think they could afford college will be future pilots and lawyers and pharmacists. It is because of this promise that those who cried tears of pain to send their kids to college cry tears of joy this afternoon. It is because of this promise that a skinny immigrant with a thick accent can dream of working in the White House, believing in the power of a nation which is not his own, the promise of South Dakota State. So 4 years later, I stand corrected. Despite the weather 3 weeks ago, this place is not a snow-capped flatness of nothingness. It is a land full of promises, rooted in legacy, and realized in the present. We are proud members of the graduating class of 2018, surrounded by the best and the brightest that this state has to offer. SDSU has given us so much. It is our turn to give back to SDSU. Today is your last day as Jackrabbits, but tomorrow is your first day as alumni. Go out to your graduate schools, your full-time jobs, your part-time internships, your business startups, and find a promise you believe in. Then stay true to that promise. You don't need to take huge steps. Take a small step every single day. Remember, if your tomorrow is not better than your today, you can do something better. That is how you can live up to the promise of South Dakota State, which reflects our collective belief that yesterday, today, and every day is a great day to be a Jackrabbit. Thank you.
Thank you, Viraj, for those inspirational remarks. I'm proud to be your friend. I am pleased to invite the Honorable Pam Roberts of the South Dakota Board of Regents to the podium to authorize the conferral of degrees. Regent Roberts.
Good afternoon. It's an honor for me to join you and greet you on behalf of the South Dakota Board of Regents. We join your family and friends today in commending and congratulating you on your hard work in earning your university degree. I'm especially excited to be at SDSU today because 40 years ago, I was sitting in the seats that you're sitting in, getting my diploma from SDSU, and it has served me well. Go Jacks. So now, by the authority vested in me as a member of the South Dakota Board of Regents, I authorize Dr. Barry Dunn, President of South Dakota State University, to award the degrees recommended. Congratulations, graduates, and have a great day. Best wishes.
Thank you, Regent Roberts. The candidates for the associate and bachelor's degrees will be presented by the Vice President of the Faculty Senate, Professor Mick Nagy.
The students whose names appear in the printed program for this commencement have been approved by the faculty of South Dakota State University and the South Dakota Board of Regents to receive the Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of General Studies, Bachelor of Music Education, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Landscape Architecture, and Associate of Arts or Associate of Sciences degrees upon satisfactory completion of the degree requirements. Will those who are to receive these degrees please stand? That's you. President Dunn, I take great pleasure in presenting these candidates to you in order that you may confer upon them the appropriate degree in their respective fields.
You can hang out longer, but really this is about graduation, so we want you to stand. So thank you, Dr. Nagy. By virtue of the authority delegated to me by the Board of Regents of Higher Education of the state of South Dakota, I confer upon each of you the degree Bachelor of Arts, Bachelors of General Studies, Bachelor of Music Education, Bachelors of Science, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Landscape Architecture, and Associate of Arts or Associate of Science degrees in your chosen field, upon satisfactory completion of the degree requirements with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. The candidates for these degrees will now present themselves on the stage for recognition. You will come forward by college and be congratulated by the dean of your college. Those of you waiting for your college to be called, please be seated. Individual graduates will be announced by Andrea Carlisle, Director of Forensics and Instructor of Communication Studies. Jane Mort, Dean of the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions, will introduce the graduates of the College of Pharmacy and Allied Professions.
President Dunn, the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions prepares pharmacy and medical lab science graduates with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to provide high-quality patient care. These graduates have demonstrated their expertise of pharmaceutical and medical laboratory sciences and are prepared to pursue opportunities where they will improve the health of people throughout the state, nation, and world.
Maya Baker. Callie Bendex. Samantha Boak. Natalie Bolin. Miranda Boras. Hannah Brockmeyer. Bailey Bunger. Jenna Caridi. Andy Clayton. Angela Dahlgren. Lindsay DeFrancisco. Amanda Dickinson. Scott Dingus. Joseph Dolick. Michaela Ernst. Chelsea Fast. Ryan Flynn. Sarah Ginsbach. Shani Hanning. Lexi Hoffman. Luke Ilinsky. Ashley Jensen. Sarah Jesse. Mackenzie Jones. Taylor Kelsey. Megan Kluber. Lily Koob. Jessica Kochkagaro. Christopher Kochkar. Sarah Krubecker. Jacob Lang. Bailey Lear. Abigail Metchkenberg. Blake Medvec. Madison Mueller. Zachary Mueller. Brooke Ninablink. Brandon Nigg. Caitlin Norton. Alexis Nyberg. Emily Pearson. Monica Politatsky. Holly Pollock. Graham Protexter. Shelby Retzer. Heidi Ringling. Taylor Rothenberger. Janae Sampson. Brittany Saunders. Megan Schliessman. Molly Sharemp. Taylor Siebert. Holden Sjogren. Matthew Schmidt. Savannah Shakur. Stephen Zabo. Trevor Tragila. Katya Vashkin. Shelby Vandrell. Kesha Vogus. Patrick Watchhorn. Dennis Weber. Calvin Worth. Matthew Wyman. Michaela Walter. Rachel Zacher. Melissa Durkee. Alexandra Fugate. Lauren Goose. Danielle Harrison. Caitlin Hazel. Emily Nagel. Maria Nagelhout. Kelsey Sankin. Elizabeth Scholl. Rebecca Thiel. Robert Ties. Brett Vercusier. Belinda Yam.
Thank you, Dean Mort. Jill Thorngren, Dean of the College of Education and Human Sciences, will introduce the graduates of that college.
President Dunn, the following graduates of the College of Education and Human Sciences are prepared to enhance the human potential of our world in the areas of education, business, government, health, industry, and recreation through their professional roles in service to the global community of individuals, families, and nations.
Kubayo Claudine. Jesse Alberts. Carissa Adams. Victoria Arendt. Taylon Albrecht. Brady Altman. Alex Anderson. Courtney Anderson. Emily Anderson. Cole Anderson. Kristen Anderson. Mackenzie Anderson. Taylor Anderson. Heather Arbach. Madison Archer. Lane Ani. Trina Baker. Christopher Bolster. Brianna Barker. Jordan Bardolph. Morgan Behrens. Eucurio Beltran. Colton Bender. Kelsey Behrens. Shelby Birdie. Seth Bjordal. Andrea Bland. Aaron Balze. Samantha Blum. Jace Bollmeyer. Priscilla Boland. Alexander Bonema. Jasmine Bonema. Allison Boots. Brenna Brown. David Brown. Michaela Brown. Kaylee Buchholz. Caitlin Butte. Whitney Byers. Brittany Canfield. Christensen. Hannah Corning. Ashlyn Davis. Okay. Wayne DeSaro. Leah Devins. Trang Tui Ding. Jewett, Bailey Johnson, Emma Johnson, McKenna Jordan, Cole Julius, Zoe Capra-Britannia, Rebecca Kaiser, Jenna Keene, Shelby Kinghorn, Hannah Kloss, Courtney Connect, Abigail Knipp, Tori Knudsen, Kirsten Kohler, Ashley Kahn, Zachary Kuzman, Maggie Kringen, Jody Kriz, Erica Crump, Charles Lamb, Rachel Landmark, Vanessa Lane, Caleb Langer, Lindsay Larson, Justin LeClaire, Nicole Lent, Shelby Lingsheet, Tyler Lindgren, Wang Fong Lee, Bailey Loaf, Matea Lunstra, Kyle Lyons, McKenna McDonald, Bianca Madonia, Michaela Malsum, Guamela Matamea Modova, Katie Mathis, Taylor Mays, Caitlin McCracken, Alexis McGivray, Paige Meester, Jake Melius, Jenna Mersbergen, Keegan Mertens, Abigail Meyer, Shani Mickelson, Sabala Matikaku, Muhammad Niquidin Muhammad Fowd, Lindsay Moreland, Emily Moore, Abby Murphy, Colleen Nelson, Mariah Nelson, Ember Newman, Rachel Gager Roscom. Riley Roth. Sierra Russ. Stephanie Russell. Gage Ryan. Alejandro Sanchez. Lily Sanderson. Casey Schmidt. Sarah Schmidt. Danielle Schmitz. Mackenzie Schmitz. Whitney Schnooze. Brandy Schuling. Shelby Schult. Jenny Schlieslow. McKenna Schallberg. John Shape. Aaron Short. Jamie Schulmiller. Lindsay Simon. Michaela Simon. Maria Sloniker. Samantha Schmidt. Kaylin Smith. Kale Smith. Kristen Smith. Maria St. Aubin. Lindsay Staub. Haley Stoll. Sierra Stans. Doran Starnes. Alexander Steed. Brett Steffen. Madison Strandberg. Mallory Sturridge. Taylor Studentansky. Miranda Sullivan. Rachel Swan. Hannah Swanson. Samantha Swinson. Emily Swihart. Madison Tackle. Catherine Tarafar. Selma Takal. Erica Thien. Alexa Tricolo. Courtney Trapp. Colleen Sheeta. Tiara Ugofoski. Ashley Unikas. Emily Utek. Casey Youthy. Trisha Van Wake.
Thank you, Dean Thorngren. The College of Arts and Science graduates will now be introduced by Interim Dean Jason Zimmerman.
President Dunn, the following graduates of the College of Arts and Sciences have successfully met the requirements specified within their respective disciplines and will now enter the various professions to strengthen the vitality of our state, nation, and world. At this time, South Dakota State University and the South Dakota Board of Regents would like to award a posthumous Bachelor of Science degree in economics to Sean McClellan. Sean was a student at SDSU, nearly completing his degree before he unexpectedly passed away last fall. Sean was beloved by the faculty in economics and many others at SDSU, especially those in Air Force ROTC. He leaves many memories for those who knew him. We're honored to have shared his life and his love of learning. Now Lieutenant Brian Schroeder will present Sean's family with his degree.
Heather Cowan. Nicholas Durin. Noble Corrales. Jasmine Lewis. Olivia Nielsen. Alexis Alexander. Tessa Armstrong. Donald Beckwith. Amanda Cecil. Stefano Cesar Blatt. Dana Chavez. Anna Shequin. Emily DeWard. TJ Duez. Megan Invelson. Catherine Fiore. Molly Freese. Raymond First. Cassidy Gordon. Haley Hansen. Taylor Harming. Tia Holtze. Eric Heidel. Jamie Jansen. John Jordan. Kayla Judson. Allison Kantak. Lilith Karapantanyan. Kelsey King. Haley Klein. Ashley Kesters. Melvin Levesque. Asia Lores. Shania Meyer. Thomas Wynn. Rebecca Olive. Kyle Plumtree. Jessica Popovich. Kayla Purum. Alex Purdy. Andrew Rammel. Maria Reimers. Ingrid Reif. Cole Chiminau. Kaylin Schlaba. Alex Small. Arodi Suleiman. Jocelyn Ventura. Carlene Tiemann. Ellie Thompson. Carson Van Duke. Brett Werpy. Richard Wilcox III. Sophia Zabalalova. Rachel Funk. Jacob Ogland. Kate Fielmeyer. Rickinson Goel. Kyle Johnson. Tomami Ogasara. Anastasia Pierce. Marsha Robinson. Cameron Smith. Darren Smith. Sarah Scheisenbach. Jamie Geed. Jessica Spates. Janie Wood. Rachel Dretz. Kyle Franta. Trit Gardner. Carter Roberts. Thomas Schneider. Caleb Cheddar. Kate Allen. Alexander Kieseker. Megan Larson. Martha Moraine. Kyle Schroeder. Ian Krickelberg. Jennifer Townsend. Tana Waltman. Tyler Youngquist. Adasola Adareti. Junaid Ahmed. Jamie Albee. Amber Alvey. Benjamin Aman. Nicole Amundsen. Alexander Anderson. Emma Ahrens. Nuhat Azad. Joel Barker. Eric Barnes. Blake Barster. Aspen Becken. Brianna Bindinelli. Austin Beninga. Manuel Bernal. Caitlin Baldus. Paige Block. Carly Boder. Kayla Bohr. Nathan Brady. Emily Breman. Christina Breman. Shelby Barster. Hannah Bressler. Miranda Bronin. Lane Brown. Sammy Joe Bryant. Shina Burt. Eli Campbell. Benjamin Carper. Hunter Christensen. Caitlin Christensen. Ramsey Christopherson. Colin Clays. Sarah C. Clay. Kaylee Kavanaugh. Tabitha Clement. Kayla Collins. Trey Cook. Morgan Krauser. Richard Hanashik, Tiffany Hansen, Trevor Hansen, Alex Hansen, Macy Harrington, Elizabeth Hartzler, Marcus Hasselhoff, Nicole Hatcher, Jenny Hagee, Alex Harold, Jessica Herbold, Tyler Hisson, Thomas Happ, Amanda Howard, Philip Johnson, McCade Iverson, Alicia Avishka, Paul Jacobson, Matthew Jesperson, Alexandra Johnson, Christian Johnson, Derek Johnson, Krista Johnson, Tanner Johnson, Josiah Jarimbi, Jordan Junkie, Courtney Jurgens, Lucas Callis, Mutham Kurashi Pathram. Shah Haril Rahman. Danielle Rang. Jasmila Pickett. Gunnar Rang. Mackenzie Rearson. McKenna Rudabush. Mid Sufor Sakat. Matthew Schmidt. Monica Schnetter. Kyle Schroeder. Charles Shugnek. Matthew Siebert. Brooklyn Shriso. Hannah Celine Wagner. Cole Selnow. Kelsey Sogstad. Austin Sirk. Melissa Shepard. Colin Sherrard. Scott Simmons. Jenna Skinner. Cheyenne Spielman. Natasha Sir Macroni Grung. Shayla Stage. Tori Stepp. Shannon Stevens. Natasha Streer. Zane Swanson. Alexander Tanitan. Brighton Severson. Trisha Thompson. Jessica Tressler. Sheldon Tullio. Aisha Turner. Adrong Ung. Tad Van Oft. Zachary Viss. Anthony Washington. Brianna Weber. Caitlin Westland. Ashley Wigton. Caleb Woodring. Elizabeth Yosek. Carissa Zeski. As part of the Jackrabbit celebration, please join the symphonic band in the playing of Yellow and the Blue, South Dakota State's alma mater, and Ring the Bell, our fight song. Words can be found on page 50 of your program. Please, at the end of the song, please remain standing.
It's been a real pleasure for me to preside at this 132nd commencement celebration. Graduates, you have now earned your degree. You have realized your dream. Let your imagination help you pursue an exciting future, and may your time as a jackrabbit serve you well on the road ahead. Congratulations. The commencement ceremony for South Dakota State University is adjourned, but please remain standing until the colors have been retired.
And if you could please stay standing as the platform party exits, and please allow the graduates to leave the floor as well. Thank you all.